and welcome to part 2 of the California Guide video, White Supremacy and the HIV African American Genocide. And this video, we're going to break down the HIV epidemic in the black community and the U.S. government's involvement in black people getting affected with this disease, and even other minority and lower class people in the United States. Now, I know there's a lot of naysayers out there. They probably would say, Cali guy, you don't know what you're talking about. This is a man-made disease. It's natural. We don't know the disease. And that probably might be true. But there's evidence to back up what I'm saying. The government has used diseases to test out on different people. That's fact. Look at the Tuskegee Airmen, for example. The Tuskegee Airmen, they were used as guinea pigs by the U.S. government, and they were later affected with diseases. So how would it not be far-fetched that maybe the U.S. government did this with HIV? There was no HIV in 1970 that we know of. There was no HIV in the 60s. There was a case that we found out recently, an alleged case. I'm going to break it down in future videos. But it was just never any evidence of this particular disease. It was known as the gay disease, the black disease. So this disease just pops up in the 80s. Why? Because again, in the 60s and 70s, this was the time of America changing. Black people started to have rights. Racism was not going away, but laws were being passed. You had more freedoms in the United States in the early 70s and late 60s. You had Watergate. We had an infiltration of the United States government doing crimes to President of the United States, Richard Nixon at the time. So, with all this being done back in that timeline, going into the 80s was a different time period. The Cold War was just heating up, literally, not figuratively, but literally. The Cold War was heating up even more so in the 80s. They were just about to build the Star Wars system. President Reagan was just elected as president. So all these things started to transpire in the early 80s. This mysterious disease. This disease came about in the early 80s, 1981 in San Francisco in the bathhouse. That's when this disease took place, the very first infection for HIV. Why was that disease placed there in the first place? To kill gays and then to infect blacks at the same time. The United States government needed to depopulate both populations, both communities. So that was the reason why this disease was so prevalent. Just like crack, just like guns, white supremacy needed to figure out a way to depopulate the black population because we were getting to populate a lot. So, that's another video for another time, the guns and crack. And you guys can look some of this stuff up too, but we're going to stick to the HIV. So, the government figured by testing it out on Africans, gays, blacks, and again, poor people, what do? When they have nothing to do, they have sex. Poor people may commit crime. Poor people either work hard, so they try to make a living and keep themselves off the street. Forms of prostitution was taking place. So the government needed to wipe out the black population, the white supremacy. So that was the purpose of this. And now, today, we go into 2016, 15, in the 21st century. This disease has been around since the 1980s, over 35 years, practically. And there's no cure. You had different medicines to prevent the AIDS. You have medicines that prevent AIDS, but you kind of control your HIV, but it's just no known cure. I believe that there is a cure in the vault somewhere. If the cure comes out, that means no money is going to be made off the pharmaceutical companies that would give you these different drugs for HIV and AIDS. So that ends that epidemic. So that's why you don't get a cure to answer that to people. So what can black people do about this disease? We need to start educating our young people in the community and older people when it comes to this disease. Black people need to learn to protect themselves. But we're going to break more of this down in the third one in part 3 on solutions to HIV and how, because it's like an epidemic and genocide in the big cities. So we're going to go, because I like to do short videos. People, I know you say, well, I don't want to do 15 minutes because I like to kind of cover things in 5 or 6 minutes. So I enjoy these little short videos, little segments. But, we're going to break down more of how the pro-blacks could face off against HIV and how we could come up with some different solutions. So stay tuned to part 3.